Hello, this is George Demaree again with another episode of Your Money Matters. Let me tell you what we're going to talk about. I had a whole different show I was going to do today, and I changed. And the reason being is because all this debate going on about the debt ceiling and whether the Republican Party is going to hold our president hostage on raising the debt ceiling. Well, what does that mean? I was talking to a few people in the office and my son today and said, well, Dad, really, how does that affect us? Well, let me tell you what. If they don't raise the debt ceiling, it affects not only the American economy, but global economy. Treasurer Secretary Janet Yellen warns the U.S. is expected to hit 34 trillion. It hit its debt limit by Thursday, January 19th. Now, she has outlined a plan to delay default until the summer. But America cannot default on its debt. This is very important for everybody, for all of our viewers to understand the importance of what's going on and the decision that Congress is making that will affect all of us. I don't care, rich or poor, doesn't make any difference. And we all know that anything that hurts Americans as a whole hurts black people double, and many times triple than any other ethnicity. This is the first debt limit fight that since the Republicans in this last cycle has taken control of the House. They are trying to leverage negotiations, right, to secure deep spending cuts. Now, what kind of deep spending cuts? Those cuts will affect the poor and the middle class. I'm telling you, they're looking at Social Security, they're looking at Medicare, Medicaid, things that help their programs. They call entitlement programs. I don't call them entitlement programs because you have paid into Social Security your entire life. That if you happen to be working for somebody, about 6.5% of your money that you earn goes into Social Security, and your employer pays the other 6.5%. That's just a fact. So nobody's giving you any money. That's money that you've had, that when you turn to be 62, you become eligible, but you become full retirement age based on the day you were born. Full retirement age for most people now that is below 50 years old is age 67, all right? All right, if they don't raise the debt ceiling, millions of Americans will face financial hardship. And what is the debt ceiling? I mean, tell me what that means. Again, I had my own son that said, okay, Dad, what does that mean to me? It's the amount of money that the government can borrow to pay its commitments. Now, listen to me. To pay its current commitments. It's not any new spending. The U.S. government borrows huge sums of money to cover its expenses. In the last, and you can find this, all the information that I have on this, you can also find it. That our federal government, in Money Matters, one of the things we tell our folks is do not spend more than you make. Well, the federal government always spends more money than they make, and it's one of the causes of this big federal debt that we have. Law, and let me tell you an amazing statistic. Lawmakers have raised the debt ceiling dozens of times. According to CBS News, since 1960, Congress has acted 78 times to raise, temporarily extend, or revise the definition of the debt limit. So it's not like it's not happened before. America cannot default on its debt. It shouldn't even be a debate, and it should not be form of negotiation, because we can't make it. What happens if they don't is catastrophic. The debt limit has changed, and here's another statistic. The debt limit has changed 49 times under Republican presidents and 29 times under Democratic administrations. So it's actually changed more on the Republicans than the Democrats, but yet Republicans now are talking about holding it hostage in order to leverage cuts. And remember this, guys, it is not new spending, but what the government has already committed to. Well, what do those expenses include? The biggest expense is Social Security and Medicare. It's one of the biggest expenses. But again, Social Security is something that we've all paid into for a number of years. It just doesn't happen. There are literally millions of Americans who are dependent on Social Security. In 2020, there were a little over 51 million Americans who were 65 plus. The great majority of those Americans are dependent on their Social Security check. And remember, we've talked about Social Security before. Social Security was not designed to be your total source of income. It was designed to help you, but not be something that you totally depend upon. But yet, there are literally millions of Americans who could not make it if all of a sudden those Social Security checks stopped. And that is a great possibility if they don't raise the debt ceiling. It includes tax refunds. How many regular Americans every year are dependent on their tax refund? How many? I've said in Money Matters over the years that take your tax refund and invest it, pay off debt. Remember, all of these decisions that they make are beyond your control. But one of the things you can control is your spending and what you need to do to pay off debt. Debt put handcuffs on you. But again, if they don't increase the debt ceiling, there's a possibility that tax refunds don't get paid. It pays the salaries of all government employees. Think about all the people that you know who are government employees, who are dependent on the government to be able to pay its bills. It hurts veterans' benefits. Our veterans who have fought for this country, you would jeopardize their benefits? Interest on all existing debts. I read it in doing my research for this to realize that the debt that the interest that we pay on the debt weekly is almost $1 billion just in interest. It has gone up. I was watching, if you go online, you can find this. There is a website that you can go to that actually shows you how much the debt is going up every second. And the debt that I was looking at, it was going up $1 million every 33 seconds. Man, that's incredible. Well, what would happen if the U.S. defaults on its debts? We talked about that, you know. Every program funded by the government would be at risk. Every program. Myers McGuinness, the president of the Bipartisan Committee for Responsible Federal Budget, says anyone could pick their favorite program to fund. Now, programs could be funded, but now you have people that could pick what programs they want to be funded because we wouldn't have enough, because the money that we're taking in taxes every month is not enough to pay what we have going out. Just not. The U.S. has never defaulted by failing to raise the tax limit in time. Just not happening. The reason it won't happen is because everybody knows what will happen. Stock market would fall. Again, people not getting paid, and this is not just an American, a U.S. crisis, it would be a global crisis. The consequences are they're really unpredictable, but the possibilities has affected, the stock market in the past. So what are some of the other results if they don't pay off the debt in time? Well, higher interest rates. We're in a process of fighting higher interest rates today. Because our inflation was so high, the federal government, the feds, decided that they systematically have raised interest rates. Now it is double the cost of purchasing money. Remember, we talked about when you purchase a car. When you purchase a car, the first thing you buy, unless you're paying cash, the first thing you buy is the money to buy the car. If that happens, the interest rates that you're going to need, they're already over 6%. If that happens, who knows how high they could go. Mortgages. Mortgages are a ton more expensive today than they were this time last year. They cannot default on raising the debt limit. Please do some research on this yourself and understand how that affects you. Credit card rates. We talked about credit card rates in another program. The average credit card rate today is 20%. Now, that means if you owe $1,000, but then a couple of $10, $12, you're going to have to pay back $1,200. That will cost you $200 for every $1,000 that you borrowed within a few dollars. It is, again, that's why it's important not to hold credit card debt, but you see what happens if they default. And it would even risk your retirement savings, because if that happens, it has always affected the stock market, and a large percentage of a lot of people's retirement money is in the stock market. So always understand what's going on. Do your research. Find out when you hear things like not raising the debt ceiling for the federal government, how that affects you. This affects who you vote for. You need to vote for people who have your best interest at heart. Defaulting on our government's debt limit and defaulting on what we owe just won't do it. This information comes from a number of sources, from U.S. News, Time Magazine, Forbes, New York Times, U.S. News and World Report. And I finally remember what will happen. It will slash government services. It will raise interest rates. It will cause a panic on the stock market. It will do a run on money markets. It'll be a sell-off on gold, and the effect is more long-term than you know. This has been another episode of Money Matters, and it is my goal to share with you as much information that I can to help you to make good, solid, strategic financial decisions, but to understand why things are going on in the world around you. Thank you. Thank you for being there, and God bless you, and so do we.